Welcome to Critical Café,
Join us as we chat about the latest episode,
the campaign as a whole, and Critical Role in general.
all while we partake in a delicious cup of coffee. So grab yourself a tasty beverage
Settle into your favorite cozy spot.
and get ready for a little geek philosophy. Welcome back to Critical Cafe Live. If you're new to geek philosophy in general, my name is Brian and this is Crystal. And we are going to be talking about all things Critical Role, especially the last couple of episodes this time. Apparently, I do this intro different every time we do this, so that's just probably going to be a thing now. But we were off last week, so we're going to make sure that we cover the last two episodes of Critical Role, Campaign 3. If you'd like to join us in the chat, please do if you're catching this live. We would like to bring in your comments and have you join in the conversation as we chat about all the things that happened in the last couple episodes. If you're catching this in the recorded version, don't worry, you can add your comments to the video comments and we will jump in and answer those as we can moving forward. So yeah, anything else I'm forgetting before we jump in, Crystal?
No. I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll jump right in. So, as usual, we kind of make use of Danny Carr's critical recap. She does a great job of doing a recap of each of the shows to kind of keep us all on track. So, we're going to start with Campaign 3, Episode 56. And we'll go through the first section. She does a good job of breaking these down into sections. So we'll do a quick recap. I'll skim through and do the highlights from her highlights, and then we'll jump over and chat about it. So here we go. First things first, if you remember, the group was in the middle of, well, not in the middle, but really starting their journey traveling with their new riding goats that they had just picked up. So they're crossing the Flocken Alps. They're heading to the Savalier Wood. And the first couple days of first couple days of travel are pretty easy. And there's, yeah, exactly. And then there's a blizzard coming on the third day, and they actually have a point of exhaustion for Chetney and Imogen, which plays into some things later. On the fourth day, they have a couple frost giants throwing boulders at them. They sled down the mountain. Goats know what to do when they've got to get down the mountain fast, so they do their thing, and everybody else kind of escapes with the help of Imogen's telepathy and fairy fire from Fern. Not fairy fire, but fire from Fern. But she's Fae, so I guess we could call it that. And Frida using exactly Fae fire, and then Frida using his sharpshooting abilities. And they're able to kind of let the giants know they should not keep coming after them. The goats kind of stop at the end of the mountain, or the base of the mountain, and they are right beside the river that kind of runs through this place. And they realize that it's flowing in the direction that they're going. And they were like, well, maybe it would be shorter if we travel by river. So they consider making a boat and lashing their goats together and see if they can float and all of this stuff. It's really pretty interesting how they put this thing together here. But instead, they take the afternoon to come up with a raft from the trees that are around, and Frida asks Deanna to put Death Ward on FCG, and said, he's a healer, so he needs to stay alive, but also because Frida cares a lot about FCG. So she goes and asks what their intention are with Frida, and FCG says, hey, I'm just trying to make Frida happy. And then FCG encourages Deanna to kind of talk with Chetney along the way. So that was like the first part of this. Let's jump over to the chat and see what we got here. So hey, let's welcome a couple people in. So,
hi.
We have Andrew's back. Nice. Good to see you again. Very cool. And then we also have, hey, Lee. First time catching it live. Welcome. Glad you were able to make it to the live version. Happy to have you. Very good. So what are your thoughts, Crystal, on like the first part of the show?
Well, first I thought that the whole scene with the frost giants was hilarious because, it was as if it was this crazy chase scene in a cartoon somewhere or something. They didn't even slow down. They just started running and coasting through the ice and the snow.
Yeah.
And there's these giants like trying to throw boulders and Imogen's catching them with her telepathy. And, like it was a really cool, almost kind of like a chase scene, but not really. The one giant is behind them and is fallen and is sledding behind them almost, that they've knocked down. And so it was a cool scene that I want to see some fan art for. But,
me too.
then they get to like the Boreal River and oh my gosh, this group, you guys, like the harebrained schemes that they that they try to come up with. It's like, can we float the goats? Can we make a boat? How deep is the water? Can we just get on the goats and go? It was, what do we do with the goats if we leave? That type of thing. So, kind of where we left it off, I feel like they still didn't really 100% know at that moment, what they were going to do. I think the idea was that they were going to create this raft and take the goats with them. So it was a little crazy, but fun in the same instance. So,
and the whole time, I think you and I were like watching this part at least, and it comes into play actually in the next section. But like, we were both like, I don't think they understand what these goats are. Like, I don't think that the group really grasped the concept of these riding goats. I thought he did a good job describing them, but I think
they're not miniature goats.
They didn't. They're not.
They're
these,
big
like, regular
goats.
size. They're horse-sized goats. They're
like
huge.
Horse-sized goats.
So I think they didn't quite get the fact that this is a fantasy version of a goat that is meant for riding, and yeah. So anyway, let's continue because things get really interesting really fast with this whole goat thing. So. All right, so now, actually, before we get to some of the interesting goat stuff, there is the God Talk. So they finish the raft basically as night is kicking in. So they figure they're going to stay there for the night and then they'll set out in the morning. But FCG casts Commune to reach out to the Changebringer and basically asks, trying to figure out, is she real? And the wind starts picking up, and in the distance he can see sort of a figure that's way out on the horizon with hair that's very long and flowing like the wind around FCG, and basically kind of letting him know that the Changebringer has been watching over him or watching in general. And FCG thanks her and asks if she needs help. But like, there's this whole like, a little bit of tension there, not really saying so much about whether or not she needs help. And then sort of her hair kind of lifts and it looks like sort of like a rope, and he kind of senses, they may need help. The gods may need help. So he sees her join the other shapes in the sky, and he sees it as something that's both important and something that they need to talk about with others at some point. So he talks to Deanna and asks her how she remains faithful, even though she's a cynic about everything. And Deanna explains that she puts her faith more in the people around her and the people within that faith with the gods, more of that than the gods themselves. And so she's grateful to the Dawn Father, but it's the people that serve the Dawn Father that she trusts more than anything else.
Right.
So I thought that was a really good way of putting it. Should we jump back over and chat a little bit more about this, or do you want to keep going?
Romeo. Sorry, he stepped on my keyboard.
Sneak attack.
I mean, we could talk about it.
Okay.
I don't feel like they're, So my whole thing with that is,
jump back over.
Yeah.
Not everything that is cute is little. That is very true. Things don't have to be little in order to be cute. There are a lot of big things that are also cute too. Yeah, very good point. Sorry. Go ahead, Krista. What were you saying?
No, it's fine. So I think it is important to, big picture, he is still getting an answer ish from his deity. So
Yeah.
she's not gone. Apogee Solstice, and Predathos gone. So
Applebee
there's
Soul
still,
Cycle.
yeah, Soul Cycle, Applebee Soul Cycle. So there's still time to help. However, the group will be able to help if they can help, if there's anything else they can do once I think everybody kind of gets back together. Um, so I did think it was kind of important to keep that in mind, that, this Applebee Soul Cycle is lasting longer than it is supposed to. And I guess everything's kind of in like limbo right now. And some of
Yeah.
the powers are working and some of the powers aren't working. And so I did think it was really important to note that, he reached out and communed with who is now his God, and there was an answer. So I think that's really good for the group, morale, knowing at least there's still something out there that they can kind of fight towards, and it's not completely going unanswered with no, I guess,
Yeah.
assurance that there's still gods out there,
Yeah, and yeah. So again, Lee comes. Yeah, so very encouraging that she's
Yes.
there. Absolutely. So, and to
Yes.
me, like thinking of this also from, again, putting on DM hat and think of it from a game perspective, because we like to tackle both sides, right? Like not only is it a show that we watch and a story, but it's also a D&D game, or a role playing game in general. This could work for any system. So the thing that I like about what's going on right now is that when you've got a bunch of players that are very comfortable with each other and have been playing for a long time and have kind of seen everything, so to speak, like as far as like what their characters can do and they know abilities and things like that, there are circumstances, especially when everybody trusts each other that's playing at the table, where you can do things like what Matt is doing. And that is basically, he's not changing the rules of the game, but in story, he's making it so that you don't know whether or not you can trust on the powers that are kind of baked into your class. Like that
Right.
spell may not always work. According to the rules, there's no reason why sending shouldn't work the way it says in the book. But because of the way the story is, it's not. And because they're very much a story focused game, it's really interesting. And I think that it makes it fun for players that have been playing for a while and they know the game in and out and they know how the spells work, to like have this unknown factor of like, ooh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this stuff. So it's also making it really smart to do things like cast commune, to check in to see if the
Yeah.
gods are there. So not only from a story perspective, but from a gaming perspective, from a player's perspective, to see, hey, is my god still around that I'm getting my powers
Right.
from?
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know. It's you can't do this too much, I think, as a game master, but you have to do things in little bits and everybody has to agree on it, or at least buy into the fact that they trust, and everybody trusts Matt. So I think it's really cool the way it's playing out so far, because it's,
Yeah.
nobody should take for granted A, what the monsters do, B, what the powers of the world really are. No matter what it says in any book that you use to create your character, doesn't mean that that's the way it's going to play out, right? We also get to
Right.
see, even in this episode and the next, some really interesting takes on monsters, right? So it's really interesting. Yeah, no, I love this. Yeah, Lee points, the safety on the holodeck has been disabled. Yeah, that's a really great way to put it. The safety protocols are not working right now. Yeah, man. All right, so I'm gonna jump back over.
Yes.
We'll keep going.
Yep.
Funny enough, reference, really deep cut for Critical Role. Not really deep cut, but Mika Burton is a regular on Critical Role and is with them all the time doing things, and showed up with her dad on the latest season of Picard. So holodeck
I know, it
reference
was
is a deep
cool.
cut to someone that is also connected to the Trek universe, which I think is pretty great. So,
Yep.
all right, so yeah, goats versus gnomes. I have things to say about this, but we'll
Me
recap
too.
this first. So in the morning, the group looks over the raft and realizes that the goats are not going to fit, because this is when they finally realize that they're horse-sized goats. So Deanna kills her goat, Jerry. And then she and Chetney harvest the meat and the fur. And Imogen is basically horrified. And the group argues about what to do with the other goats, either to kill them or to leave them. And Fur magically talks to Donnie Boy, best bit of improv Matt's done, taking a weird situation and running with it. Anyway, he's like, I don't want to explode the way Jerry did. And then, like, has this whole conversation about what's going on and said, hey, you guys can eat Jerry. It gets weirder and weirder. The goats board, or the group boards the raft, and without the goats, and FCG uses the propeller attachment to push them forward. Fern uses the staff to help guide the boat. They move into the shadows in the Savalier Wood, and they're kind of like seeing how dense this is. They are really trying to see, like, what is this all about in this land? Like, all these things are just strange to them. Chetney was able to survive there for a while, but he was a werewolf, right? So, like, it's interesting to see. Well, he was after he killed one there in the Savalier Wood.
I was gonna say, I think he got it there. Yeah.
Yeah, which makes Frida kind of realize, they may be affected by lycanthropy as well, and they don't know whether or not aormatons can, be affected by this type of curse. But they figure out, hey, if it ends up taking hold, Frida doesn't want to hurt anybody, so they'll figure out what to do. So they have a few weeks before they'll know if this has happened. So that's kind of what's been going on, and then we get into bog problems. But before we get into bog problems, okay. It ended up working through. Let me just jump in by saying this was one of the few times that I was like, come on. Like, the killing of the goat, it just didn't need to be that way. It was a little heavy-handed with, I don't know. It didn't seem right. I know this stuff, I've played D&D for a long time. This kind of stuff happens in games, but it just seemed like, I don't know. It turned me off a little bit to what was going on in the game, took me out of it for a moment. They recovered really well with humor and Matt's, and the interaction between Matt and Ashley, like, basically saved it, like, with the conversation of talking to one of them.
With Donnie Boy.
And also, what saved it for me too was Imogen reacting the way I think everybody else should have reacted too, which was being horrified that someone just killed this. It's like if we were riding on horses, traveling somewhere, and someone just decided, I'm just going to kill this horse right now. We don't need it anymore, so I'm just going to kill it. It just seems so out of place for the character. I like Abria. I like how she plays normally. I have no issues with Abria, but like that situation in particular just didn't sit well with me. But I think it recovered well, and they handled it the best they could. From my perspective, what do you think, Crystal?
Well, there was total chaos in those couple of moments leading up to poor Jerry getting slaughtered, because the whole group was trying to figure out what to do with these goats. And then I heard Abria say, nobody wants to make the hard decision. I killed Jerry. And then everybody's like, what, will you do? What, you do what? And she's like, I killed the goat. I killed Jerry. We got things we got to do, or what, whatever. And it was very, like you said, you made a good point. It brought you out of the moment. It brought you out of the game. It brought you out of the visual, because it was totally unnecessary. And I almost felt like it was more Abria than it was Deanna, like, I don't know if the character itself would just slaughter the goat, or if it's just Abria being like, okay, all right, somebody's got to make a choice. Let's go. Being a little impatient or something. It was not their finest moment. I was horrified. I was sitting there just like Laura. Laura's like, no, and then at one point she even said, as Imogen, she's like, well, when we get on this raft, I want to be as far away from Deanna as I can be, like, she's just going to kill stuff, you get this cleric of the Dawn Father who you would think seemingly would appreciate life and not decimate it willy-nilly, but
Yeah, yeah. It just yeah, it
and
just seemed a
then
little off-putting. Yeah,
yeah, and then they can eat him.
yeah,
You're gonna make the goats eat their friend
yeah. So
or
cannibal
brother
goats
or
are
cousin,
gonna.
uncle, like it was
Yeah.
so
Again,
bad. It
I
was
know
so
this stuff
bad.
happens all the time in D&D. I know that is the way it is. It just for the way the game was going and the characters that were being played, it just felt different. It felt like this was like it could
It
have
was
been an
clunky.
all-out comedy D&D session and
Yeah.
like one that everybody did was just being ridiculous the whole time, and that's not
Right.
this campaign. Um Even though it's funny at times, it just seemed a little weird. I'll get over it. It's not a huge thing. They've already done things that have, I think, moved in the right direction. But it just seemed a little off to me. And I
Yeah.
thought, like I
Yeah.
said,
So
they handled it
yeah.
well in the moment. So
Right. And then when it's all said and done, they just left him there anyways, So it was almost like, okay, we actually were talking about, well, maybe they'll pull it back,
yeah,
draw it back, re go over it, or just kind of retcon it. But I mean, it happened. Poor Jerry.
yeah,
And then Donnie
yeah.
Boy was just like, I don't want to be exploded. Like Jerry.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like they turned it into something that worked, right? Like
Yeah.
they had
Yeah,
to figure out a way.
Matt and Ashley definitely saved the day on that.
Yep.
Cuz I was like, what is happening? What did that goat ever do to you?
Yeah.
So,
It
but
was,
yeah,
yeah.
it was a moment.
Yep. Yeah. Anyway, we'll head back over to the recap and keep moving on. But it got better. So okay.
Yeah,
So
it totally did. It was that moment, like, whoa. Poor Jerry.
so after the gnome slaughtering of the goats, more bog
Right.
problems ensued. So they could tell that the woods were very alive, and Imogen sends light into the forest where they saw some pixies that were annoying this strange creature, and it ends up being called a bog wretch. I thought it was a shambling mound, but maybe it's his version of what this is.
What did I call it?
Oh, I wish I could remember.
I can't remember now.
I tried to make a point to remember for this exact purpose.
Anyways.
Like a flurgan. It was like
Flurger something. I don't know. I made some funny name up.
Or Flurgan.
Yeah, Flurganurgan.
It was something. It was almost like Fluffernutter, but it was not Fluffernutter. It was like Flurgan or something. I don't know. It was really funny at the time. So when they were fighting then they end up having to sorry, that was actually funny, Andrew. I'll bring it over when we get to the chat. That's pretty good. So they end up fighting this Flurgensturgen as and the pixies are having their deal. Deanna kind of washes them away with the control of water. Frida is actually swallowed by this bog wretch, and they shoot their way out with the blunderbuss. Which was pretty cool. Like the way it all kind of went down, I was a little worried that he wasn't going to make it, but it worked out okay. And Chetney was able to basically cut a tree down to make it fall on the bog wretch, killing it, and the group is able to get back on the raft and keep going. And then as they go, they're trying to figure out where should they stop. Fern, in a really funny scene, casts Speak with Animals and puts her head underwater and starts talking to the fish with two mouths that has
and no eyes
about what's going on. And they said, hey, avoid the Wolf King. And then the group and the fish are like, nobody knows who the Wolf King is, but the information's helpful. And they decide to stay on the raft, and then they take watches as they are moving forward. So let me head over. So it was shocking, bipolar even. Yeah, it was. I agree. But again, we'll speaking about the whole and
Jerry incident.
Andrew says change his name from Gary to Giro or Giro, depending on how everybody pronounces it. But yeah,
Poor
and I
Jerry.
love and don't get me wrong, I love some Gyros, but it was a little bit.
I do too.
Okay, so thoughts on how this all went down with this Furfrischnergenberger?
It was interesting because it's the first real creature that they've come.
It was Flumper.
Flumper, something. Yeah, it was. It was Flumper. I don't remember. It was something stupid.
Flumperstein.
So, this is really the first creature that they've kind of encountered moving into the Savalier Wood that's been corrupted. So I thought that it was really interesting how Matt described everything. It seems like everything is so grotesquely like misshapen. Either it's got more eyes than it needs, or it has no eyes, or not nonagon in here. Or it has like multiple mouths and multiple heads, like they're stretched and they're skinny and, they're weird. So it was really funny with Fern ducking her head under the water and back up and talking to this fish. And some of the questions she asked, of course, she's still like being the comedy relief at this point too, right? And the fish tells them to beware the Wolf King, and she's like, okay, well, but what does he look like, or where can we find him? And he's like, I don't know, I don't have eyes. So, and then of course Chutney like yeah. Right, Chutney like perks up when he hears about the Wolf King, because he's like, oh, his one alpha dog, whatever his tattoo is. So it was a really cool scene. And I was a little worried for Frida. These Armatons have a death wish, which I'm not okay with. They're They're like kamikaze crazy, Let's just get swallowed. He wanted to get swallowed. He was trying to get swallowed and succeeded. So
yeah,
I don't know. I thought FCG had a death wish, and then we met Frida. So I mean, they're like on a mission.
The lure of shooting your way out is, I think, the thing that made him want to do that. But it was definitely a cool scene, but it was a little bit nerve-wracking to see whether that was going to pay off or not.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, let's keep going. Okay, so Deanna and Frida talk about whether or not Frida's going to turn into a werewolf, and he's not opposed to the idea. But, Deanna believes that she can rid the curse if he feels like it's a little bit, too much for him. Deanna then hasn't prayed since before she met Frida, she kind of reveals, and she joins in the prayer of thinking about the non-father for their friends, and they sleep. Another day passes, and they continue down the river, and basically they come across these cursed geysers that are theorized to be part of the initial corruption of the woods, and they explode close to where Fern is, and so Deanna and Fern, I think, are the one that missed the saves, and they're cursed by it, so they take a point of exhaustion. Here we go again, having their maximum health, or having it reduced by 5 points. So basically their max hit points gets dropped. Chetney knew, but hadn't been able to warn them in time. But now they're kind of on the lookout for them. Frida spots the tip of a tower in the distance and says basically, hey, let's pull the raft over and investigate. And Frida leads them through the woods, and they sort of adjust to the woods kind of block their path as they're going through, which is a little strange. But they are able to see Malaeusmere in the distance, and the towers and the walls of the homes are overgrown, and it's been overtaken by this big forest. So I'm going to keep going through this just so we can kind of talk about how this goes, because then they get to the northern side of the massive city, And this is where they have the Guild Hollow tower that Ludinus worked in. This is really one of the big things that is going to be of interest to them because they want to find out more about what's going on. So Imogen summons a Thought Eater and basically says, hey, go to the north as a distraction of what's going on. And that this being like kind of has this high-pitched shrieking sound that it's emitting as it's going through, which attracts this massive, again, augmented type elk creature, slams into the Thought Eater and destroys it. It just looks like this featureless sort of face, if you call a face featureless, with 10 spider-like limbs. 2 of them are human-like arms that are dragged and pull. This is really disturbing type of stuff. So then FCG casts telepathic bond on everyone, and that way they can speak to each other in their mind. They don't have to make any more sound. And Chetney can sense that there are some presences around them. So undead ghost type creatures around. And they noticed their skeletal bodies that are all tangled up in the vegetation. And it looks like they may have been fleeing families. So they're heading for the tower. And that's kind of where this episode ends. So, yeah, thoughts on how we got to where we are now?
Well, that moose elk creature thing sounded really disgusting. Doesn't have any eyes. It's completely like no face, but it's slick with antlers, and then it's got these big long baby arms or something behind it, but it moves fast at the same time, and it's apparently attracted by sound. So they were really smart. Imogen was really smart with sending out kind of a decoy first to see if noise would be a big factor and how quiet they have to be. Because I know they start casting, Pass Without a Trace a couple times to try to help with their stealth rolls. They're trying to be as quiet as they can based on the sound drawing creatures. Like that big elk thing that was just crazy.
Yeah.
So
it's like Lee says, I don't know why, but I love it when Matt brings the body horror. It definitely has an effect, right? Like, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but what I like about it is that it sort of helps differentiate like the normal like evil guys that are, like, it's different from what's going on, for example, with when Imogen was when Laudna was having problems with Delilah, right? Delilah, evil and crazy, and we've known that since campaign 1, but this is different from that, right? Like, there's a different feel to like when this stuff happens, and it feels just like a corruptive thing. This feels like the other edge of the spectrum. Like, if anybody, most of you probably have watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? Like, where there was all these weird type of little creatures that were running around, and it was like, little rabbits that had wings or whatever it might be. They were all cute versions of this type of stuff, like a mishmash of things that were just like cute animal creatures. There was even a joke on the show, like, he's got a bear. What type of bear? Just a bear. And it was like, really? That's weird. Because like they were always some type of other bear mixed together with it, right? This seems to be the opposite end of the spectrum of not being cute, but mashed up, deformed, everything to like really punctuate what has been done to this world, like in this area, right? Like where it's really been corrupted in such a way that just makes everybody understand that this is wrong. So
yeah,
that's one of the things I like about him working this stuff in. It takes it to the edge of like this horror realm, like you were saying, like the body horror stuff, but it's also just so weird that it instantly makes everybody at the table go, yeah, we know these are not good. Like you know immediately. It's hard to argue whether or not they're whether their ideology matches yours is not an issue. Like something's going on. Yeah.
Well, and then there's all these like skeletons that plants have grown through, and they're, stuck to buildings. And Laura made a funny joke about, The Last of Us. Her joke about the what is it, cordyceps? Maybe they're all attached. And then everybody was just stone faced. I was like,
and for Laura to do it too, because she's in The Last of Us Part 2, like you should, give Laura some props.
It was funny though. I was like, oh yeah, there we go. Nobody step on anything. We don't want to alert anything.
2 Last of Us stars at the table, and nobody picked up on that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Or they did, and they just didn't react, which is not like them. So it makes me think that they just didn't hear.
I think they didn't catch it. Yeah. So, I think they just didn't catch it. But yeah, so, and luckily because we missed 2, we roll right into what's going on the next. So let's jump back over. Yeah. We're now in the latest episode, which is 57, The Sorrow of Meleismere. And so we know what just happened. We just took it through. So now the ghost path. So they start diving deeper into the ruins. Again, they're all tangled up and corrupted. At this point, everybody still has the telepathic bond going on. I think it lasts for an hour, if I remember right. So they're able to kind of stay quiet. Everybody's making stealth checks. For the most part, I think Pass Without Trace was cast. So everybody's doing pretty well for the most part as they're going. They spot the tower in the distance, and it's so tall that the top is going above the tree line. And so as they're moving through, they're seeing like the frequent ghosts and skeletal bodies and all this stuff like we just talked about. And the trees are kind of twisted, and they resemble like corpses. And so it's really, kind of an eerie sensation going through. FCG casts Divination, asking the Changebringer to show them a safe path. And then a wind blows, and it clears a path for them to travel. FCG guides them, and they're confronted by a bunch of different ghosts. They fight the ghosts and eventually get rid of them, though Chetney is momentarily possessed, and Frida spots a creature moving around in the towers, and it's something that's winged and headless, and again, weird stuff going on. So what do you think about this first venture into Meleismere?
Well, the whole place is rife with like spirits and ghosts, and Chetney saw them kind of at the very end. Is kind of how the last episode ended, was Chetney seeing all of these, and they're noticing him, and so that's kind of where it picked back up, is where these ghosts are attacking, and and then FCG gets possessed. It was FCG? No, it's Frida. You just read it.
I'm pretty sure it was Chetney that got.
Chetney was possessed. What am I saying?
Yeah,
Chetney.
Sure.
Yeah, Chetney was possessed.
Danny Carr, everybody. Critical recap. Check it out. She's got us covered.
Yes, Chetney. It was Chetney.
Yeah, so Chetney.
Okay, so,
yep.
But yeah, so it was just, it was kind of chaos with the ghosts, and I think that he even ended up casting, before he got possessed, didn't he cast, they cast Turn Undead, and it got rid of a bunch of them, but then it left, I think 5. So they were pretty much getting mobbed by these things. Yeah. And it was a really good, well-placed spell, because I think it would have been a much more tough. It was like a little a weenie deck coming after you in MTG, Magic the Gathering, where it's like a bunch of little chump guys, but they can overwhelm you really quick. So it was good that they got rid of them and only had 5 left. But the place is, I guess, whenever it exploded and the corruption began, it was very fast and it was quick, and I don't think anybody got the chance to escape, really. So there's so many people that were trapped and killed, and so it's like all of their spirits are still uneasy and roaming through the ruins.
And gotta be,
and then the trees that look like corpses, and
and it's got to be worse for those spirits that are still around, because not only, it would be bad if you were stuck there anyway, but they're having to see what's happened to their home,
right?
Like at some level. Let's see. Oh, hey, Open World Attic. Hey, thanks for joining. Glad you could make it. Excellent. All right, let's
Yes.
keep going. So again, we're on episode 57. So tower to tower. So in order to avoid this flying thing, whatever it might be, they go into the first tower that is available, the closest one, and they head towards the northwestern portion of the city. Deanna spots a tapestry that has the symbol of the white tree corkscrewing upward, which they recognize as the tree, as the Uthadern crest that she's seen before. And Frida goes upstairs to find another twisting tree with a corpse-like face. Frida accidentally steps on a branch, and it injures them. And they notice the tree looking at them. And then Frida spots a tower to the northwest that is leaning at an angle and caught by the other trees before it fell down. So we've got the big leaning tower of Pisa being caught by trees. And this is likely the Guild Hollow Tower. So since Ludinus used that for studies, they're interested in checking it out. Frida chooses to stay at the window to look for other creatures while the others go to the tower. And FCG leads the others to the tower, but falls into a crack of black miasma, which reduces hit points again by 5. They are pretty stressed out. Tensions are high. Deanna encourages FCG to go to his happy place, and the telepathy that they cast earlier, remember, it's an hour that they've got this, it's starting to fade, so they are trying to get Frida to come join them so that they can be a group together, but Frida spots that winged creature returning to the tower. So then it says, okay, since that creature's going over there, I feel comfortable enough to go and rejoin the group. So timing worked out okay with all that so far.
Yeah.
The last part of that spell, they were able to get the message. So yeah, what are you thinking so far as they're getting to this?
Well, Frida was the one that saw the winged creature through the window at the top of the tower anyways, and then he was trying to keep an eye on it to make sure that, none of them made loud enough sounds to attract it. And I think eventually, he understood that it had kind of come out and was swooping down, searching for something, and it caught some prey and went back up. And so at that point, he felt he was going to stay there and keep an eye on that while the rest of the group got to the tower, or the Guild Hall Tower. And so I think the group wasn't too happy with that, really, when it was all said and done, because it seemed like, again, he's off, just sacrificing himself. They're in this crazy place. You don't want to separate, but he ended up staying behind. And then once the creature swooped down and grabbed something and had it in its claws and went back up to its roost in that room up there, he felt comfortable enough to kind of go out, get out and leave and try to start to meet back up with the rest of the group. So, it's, I can see what he's trying to look out for people, but it's very, you're like, come on, man, get with the group. Don't get left behind. We kept saying, is he gonna die? Is he gonna get killed? He's getting left behind. So
I think so. I agree with what you just said, and I think that's probably the feeling that they're going on. But he's a far-ranging integrated defense automaton, right? So he is a defender, and I think he's playing. This is just my take on it. I think he's playing it so that he is, at first and foremost, the defender of everyone. In a similar way that you've got FCG, who's that caregiver, right? And he's always the one trying to be, hey, happy day to you, and smiley day, right? And I feel like it's just a different take on the similar idea of programming. And while there is individualistic nature coming through, but by and large, you're right though. When you are splitting the party up a little bit too much, it can feel like, man, what are you doing? But think, benefit of the doubt that it's just him trying to play the way the
Yeah.
Aormaton was supposed to play at that model, so to speak. And model is such a harsh word because it's like, I think they're people, but like they're also were created, so it's interesting to kind of look at it that way. But yeah, totally agree and get it. What do you guys in the chat think? Are we reading into it too much? Is he going off and trying to be the solo savior too much?
Does Frida have a death wish?
Yeah. Is he trying to go on his own too much? I'll give it a second. I know there's a little bit of delay. I'll give it a second for you guys to jump in with that. In the meantime, by the way, if you want to check out any of the other stuff that we've got going on, head over to geekphilosophy.com. You'll be able to see all of our other things that we've got in addition to Critical Cafe. It'll link back to YouTube, which you're already on, but it'll also link to some of the things that we've got, like we've got an Etsy store we don't talk about a lot, but we've got an Etsy shop, and Crystal has designed some beautiful stickers lately, and they're available. So you can actually, I think we've got so far Artificer stickers pack, right, and a Druid sticker pack. And then we're releasing more class stickers and stuff. We've got some
Warlock is next, and then Cleric after that. So
yeah. So, and we ship those out ourselves. We also have some digital downloads of like gaming things that you can check out. So anyway, just while we're waiting for people to jump in, if they'd like, just checking the chat to make sure. All right, cool. If you think of something, there we go. I think they're doing a good job of playing their parts, but it ratchets up the anxiety. I think that's a really good point, right? Like,
yeah,
just because they may be playing that part, it doesn't change the fact of how everybody's reacting to it, right? Like, they're also playing their role, which is, why are you going off and doing that thing, right? So it's a really good point. Like, it's a group playing this game. So, yeah, the anxiety is definitely high.
Yes.
We've got that. So nice.
Very high.
All right, let's keep going. If you think anything else as we go, you guys put it in the chat and we'll bring it over. But all right, so that was the tower to tower. So now, the Wolf King.
Oh yeah, so, this boy.
Yeah, so as Frida stealthily makes their way to the group, a bridge collapses beneath their feet. And so, stuck at the bottom here, and it attracts the attention of the Wolf King, which is, we'll get to this in a minute, but a massive, horrifying creature with like 5 separate wolves' torsos that are being pulled behind like a chariot, with a primary wolf body, like this whole amalgamation of everything. Imogen creates a storm in the distance, trying to distract things and have the Wolf King go that way to get Frida the advantage of, hey, that thing's distracted, let's go run and join the rest of the group. But Chetney and FCG had already run back to try to save Frida. So, splitting the party a little bit. Imogen attempts to cast Sending to FCG, hoping that it'll work because it's not having to go across the globe anymore, or the flat surface, as FCG would say, of the planet, because it's not.
It's a flat Earth, flat,
yeah,
flat plane, whatever.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So her theory is correct. It's not that far. So he's able to actually receive the message, and they let Frida know that it's safe to come back to the tower. FCG and Chetney sprint over there, but they're followed by the Wolf King, and the others start climbing up the vines, getting to the tower's balcony. Deanna casts Guardian of Faith that looks like a big werewolf Chetney figure that is there to protect them as they're going. Freedom falls from the tower, but Imogen kind of like catches him with telekinesis. Everybody makes it inside the Guild Hollow Tower just as the Wolf King arrives, and he attempts to climb up the tower, but the Guardian Chetney is able to keep it away. Eventually gets bored and wanders off. Deanna's a little frustrated, like we were talking about with Frida, for trying to brush aside all their near-death and experiences that have been having, and says nobody wants anybody left behind. And so Frida asks her to trust that they will always make it back. So yeah, kind of fills in specifically what's going on. I have to say, and he brought this up, like as soon as he said it, I knew exactly what he meant, but I didn't ask you this. He said Wolf King was like Rat King. Are you familiar with the whole concept of the Rat King?
I'm not.
So I'm pretty sure that this is urban legend. Like it's I don't think it's a real thing, although you'll probably be able to go online and find pictures claiming that it's real or like things. Whatever the case is, the Rat King is a scenario, usually in densely populated cities or whatever, where the rats are so dense that they kind of grow together, like they burrow together and they kind of move as this entity called the Rat King, like in our
Gotcha.
real world. Like that's where the concept is. So when he said it's the Wolf King instead of the Rat King, I immediately knew what he was saying is like it was this mashup of wolves that were like being dragged along, and just the visual of that in my
Mhm.
brain. If you want to
Yeah.
be freaked out by some stuff, go check out. Again, I'm not claiming any of it's real, but go look at pictures of Rat King, and you'll see
Yeah.
after you
Well,
finish
and it
the
sounded a
podcast
little
what
bit
I was
like
saying.
a hybrid of like a hydra as well. You know, it had all these like heads, and it had
Yeah.
these long necks, and it
Yep.
was 20 feet long. And then pulling behind it was their one centralized body that was like a
Yeah.
chariot being pulled by. It was gross.
It made me. I was
Um,
thinking Hydra too. It makes you wonder if they were to cut off one of the wolf heads, would two more grow back?
yeah,
Like that
yeah.
kind of thing. So, yeah.
And then I think it's funny, Danny didn't put it in there, but Chetney talking about like he ripped his lower half off and he was running with his like werewolf legs, but with his
Yes.
upper half as being the old Chetney. So the old
Yeah.
guy, the old gnome Chetney. So that was kind of funny. I was like, I can't wait to see
Yeah.
fan art for that. That's going to look interesting. But
Not only the fan art, but like we know that they're doing the Mighty Nine animated series. When they get to
yeah,
do
yeah.
the animated series for this campaign, I can't wait for that scene with Chetney
My
ripping them out and
goodness.
start running. Yeah.
Like it's a
Oh
pair
man.
of windbreaker pants, like
Yeah. Well, the tearaway pants that he had, right?
yes,
Like he made
yes,
those
yes.
for his old man thing. So
Oh,
Lee says it may be real. The tails get tangled in knots and fuse over time. Yeah, I know it is. That's what I've seen too.
that's disgusting.
But internet. Like I've never ever heard like an actual zoologist. I have a friend that's a vet. I'll have to ask if he's ever heard about it in like any of his stuff. But in any case, the pictures are crazy when you see it. So it very well could be real. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
say anybody's wrong about it, but man,
I'm just glad they
it
didn't.
is
I'm
crazy.
glad they didn't have to fight it. I'm glad that it ended up getting bored with them and leaving, and it couldn't really kind of get purchased and follow them. So
Yep. This is a good point. So Lee makes a good point. He said he was in the army, and it's just a mind frame that you adopt to put yourself out there for people less trained. Thanks for your service, by the way.
yes,
And yeah, totally agree with that. I think there is a part of you that, right, like you are wanting to protect those that. The way I come from a military family and also martial arts background, and it was always protect those that are weaker and less fortunate than you, right? Like, and so that's just what you always were. It was a responsibility. So I completely see that. However, I think the other side of that too is like in this game called D&D, like they're all pretty competent people in the party, right? So like in some ways, it's like saying, hey. I've got to protect you because you can't handle it yourself. So that can feel insulting to the others. But I completely see what you're saying, especially if he's playing a character that was trained that way or programmed that way. He's kind of doing
yeah,
what he needs to do from his
that's his
perspective. So it's
nature.
completely,
Yeah,
exactly. It's completely valid, and it's a good quality to have in the real world is to look out for other people. But I think in this situation, especially in the game, it can be, sometimes it's a little hard for the others at the table. But I think everybody's taking it well, and it's playing well for the most part.
yeah.
But yeah, all right, let's keep it. Unless there's something else, I didn't want to cut you off. Okay, so let's keep it going. We're doing fairly well on our time. We
Yeah, we're good.
usually only cover one of these, and we're coming right up on it. So we got the Wolf King. What was left and then waking up are the last two. So, okay, good. So let's go through what was left. So we've got the tower that's been cluttered and it's filled with debris. We've got this whole sort of look of dry residue on the walls. It's like stretched parchment, and then there's a bunch of bodies. It's been looted, but Fern can sense that it was definitely Ludinus's tower. So we've got a body on the stairs, seems to have been killed by a magical trap. Then they notice a glyph. Deanna dispels it, and it allows them to go up the stairs. And then they realize that the strange parchment on the walls reminds her of shed skin. So the room upstairs has been looted, but they spot some old notes in Elvish. Deanna translates it, and they learned that it's patterns of arcana across cultures and time, and fragments of Exandrian calendar, and notes, and repetition, and shifting magic, and all this other stuff. But then another section of notes in the chamber call out to historical specialists like Vetora, Laren, and Vistarin, which none of the names rings a bell for the group, which is so, ironic, because you've got Laren. And then they see the pages that were torn from a religious tomb with comments about propaganda from the temple and inconsistencies and contradictions with religious rites, and basically trying to prove that there's no real truth or plan for the gods. And they emphasize the matron of ravens specifically, and they focus on what is her name, because name has power, right? So so interesting. We got Laren's name pop up. What do you?
Well, and I thought it was great because she was such an integral role in Calamity. And he's pretty much trying to recreate a big event like that. He's trying to harness the Appleby solstice. Appleby solstice. And whatever ended up being left over information from that time, I know that her Paisha's ball was given to
that's right.
Oh gosh.
The
Surette. Surette's children. So there's some information out there somewhere. Whether it's been gleaned or not, we don't know. But he obviously knows enough to know about her, and he knows enough to know about like some of the stuff that happened during the Calamity. So you could definitely tell by all this stuff on the walls and all the information that they're seeing that this was exactly where Ludinus was. I mean, it talks about time. It talks about the apogee solstices and harnessing power. And so there's like no doubt at this point that this is where he was. And then you find all of this propaganda against kind of the gods, trying to put questions and doubts into, I guess, people's minds on whether or not the gods are really what they're said to be.
Yeah.
And then all of this also wrapped into him trying to figure out and search for the name of the Raven Queen. Because, of course, when she ascended to that role, her name was wiped out of memory. And he, I guess, was obsessed with finding her name, which was interesting to me. So, lots of stuff pulled together.
I think this is the first time that they've directly referenced, specifically directly referenced the things that happened during that campaign arc in Calamity, right? Like, which I think is great that they're able to do that. Like, I think it worked out really well the way Brennan's storylines and Matt's are really kind of woven together. Which I guess we'll see the other side of that for when he goes over.
And then how interesting is it that the Raven Queen is kind of pulled out aside and talked about trying to find her name, and then during this apogee solstice, her champion is what's called down and captured, so he never let go of the idea of the Raven Queen. He's trying to make something about her work for him. So
it's the idea of whatever she did to rise to godhood, right? Like whatever she did to break through, and then her champion being the one that was used. There's this whole connection there. Really interesting to see how that plays out.
Yes.
as we learn a little bit more. So wrapping up the episode, we've got waking up. So Chetney rubs dirt on the walls. Basically, I think he even tries to kind of do. It's almost like dusting for prints in a way,
Yeah.
like trying
Like
to,
rubbings.
yeah, like a rubbing or an etching to kind of like see, like if you write on a pad with pencil and like trying to see what was there before. And he does see that there's a circular portion of the wall that is like unnaturally attracting the dust to it. It's clinging to it. And so Deanna casts light on her staff and touches the wall, and that circle sucks the magic right into the wall, and it glows for a moment. And then Frida starts to feel like familiar with to the place, like sort of like a tickle in the back of their mind. Imogen offers to mind meld, so to speak, and uncover what's going on. They try to talk about, hey, what spells might work on the circle. And Chetney climbs up to the ceiling and he pulls on the roots to see if there's more up there. But when he does, he realizes that there's something soft and rotting and bloody on the ceiling. Yep. And the branches tear, and then you get this ooze of skinless tendrils that are falling to the floor, and faces emerge on the skin, and something begins to form. It's sort of drawing inspiration from like the people that like from them and from the city, and there's this like life form that is sort of awakened right now and chaotic. So yeah, it's really interesting. Oh, so then the final thoughts here by Danny. Lewdness was set by the matron, and her name, could he have found it? Maybe. The Wolf King is good. I love him, but the Wolf King did nothing wrong. Get in his 5 pounds. If the name Laren sounds intriguing, make sure to watch. Yep, make sure you watch EXU Calamity if you haven't. That fleshy monster sounds terrifying, but open the circle, please. So we'll see how this goes. We'll find out tomorrow, actually. But yeah, so that's how we wrapped it up. Let me go over to the chat to see. So, well, if you have the true name, then it's possible that something captured. Yeah, absolutely. The whole concept of true names in fantasy, we've probably all been really familiar with this, but like just the fact of knowing someone's true name, there's power to that. And I love that that's being worked into this story.
Yeah.
To be able to capture or summon or control is a big thing, right? So like maybe that's what he used to turn the champion into the lens that he needed to focus. Like who knows how this worked. Maybe her name was able to control what was going on with Vax. So yeah, it's crazy stuff. Anyway, so go ahead, Crystal. What do you think before we close out? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that the group figured out that that circle is pretty much sucking the magic into it. So they were trying to figure out what spells to use to open it or to engage it or to get it to work. When, of course, Chetney is like the button pusher. He sees a red button and he pushes it, so
It's really Travis.
it really is every time.
Every
And
time.
so, of course, he like climbs up, sticks his hands someplace he can't see, and comes up with some nasty, stinking ooze. And so it ended with Matt being like, okay, we'll pick up there next time, and you're just like, oh, after he talks about all these mouths on this like thing, and it's just gross and stinky. And so, I guess they'll fight that next if it's
Yep. They'll
an
have
entity that
something
tries to
contend
harm
with.
them, I guess.
I think you're right. I think we'll see how this progresses, but well, we made it.
Yeah.
And through two episodes in an hour. So thanks everybody for sticking with us. Anything else before we close out, Crystal, that you can think of before we?
No, I'm interested to see what this circle. Maybe that was a hiding spot. Maybe there's papers of some kind, or maybe Lewdness has stashed something. So that's kind of, or maybe it's a portal to somewhere. Who knows? But I'm interested to kind of see once we get rid of this oozy thing, like where that ends up taking us. So
I agree, and yeah, and if it's not the Wolf King, then maybe the Fluffer Schnuggin or the
Yes.
Flunchen, whatever
The
it's called.
fluffer snuggler.
Yeah, maybe we'll figure out what that is. All right, everybody, have a great evening. Thanks for those of you that
Thanks,
were able to
guys.
join us in the chat. We appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Yes.